Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and I have spent the week with the biggest and possibly most overstimulating car I've ever reviewed. This is Cadillac's new Escalade IQ. This means it's the electric version of the Escalade, you can kind of think of it. And there's so much to go over with this thing, so here are the 19 things that I think you should know about it. Now this Escalade IQ is built on an entirely bespoke platform to the traditional Escalade. This is their ultium platform, and usually ultium platform vehicles have their charge door right up here on the front driver's side fender. But here, since this thing is so long and they want to be able to charge at Tesla charging ports, and those chargers are typically really short hoses, they put it further to the end of the vehicle. It's of course motorized, and that's very nice. But again, with the adapter, you'll be able to charge at a Tesla port. And then here, there's a little sticker down here on the door. It says, built with pride in GM's Factory Zero. This is their net zero carbon emissions factory, and it puts together this big and beautiful beast. And you may have just seen, but we have automatic doors here on our Escalade IQ. The door itself has a little rubber gasket in here. This handle doesn't move, but you pinch that little gasket and then it automatically opens. There's 3 different settings. The first is barely open at all, and then your middle setting is still a little bit tight, so this is the maximum setting to get the door open. Now there's a couple ways that you can close the door once you have it open. One is to take the little toggle and then pull on it like so. The next is bespoke to the driver's side, and typically, like we saw in our BMW i7, you just put your foot on the brake, and then it'll close and whir itself shut. But this last one is a show-off mode. You go to the little toggle here for your settings, go up to doors on the top of the screen, and then you can control every door individually. This is pretty sweet, and definitely a good way to show off to friends. I can even open the charging door from here. And when I want them closed, I can close them as well. But then with the door open, you can also see the little interior dash Easter egg. It's the Cadillac designation with the little swans or ducks in here. You get it on both sides of the dash. And you can see on the door itself the beautiful AKG speaker grills. And you have speakers everywhere in the headrest. Up on the ceiling, there's 40 in total, and it sounds pretty incredible. And especially with this thing lit up at night, it feels very nightclub indeed with these AKG speakers. And I'm not really sure why so many EVs do this, but there is a glove box here. There's no actual physical way to open it, but you have to press this little button here on the screen, and then you can close it, and I believe you can open it down here as well. And this is one of my favorite little details. The taillights look like piano keys, and this kind of goes in tandem with Cadillac's theme for their EVs, things like the Lyric. It's very musical, and that continues here in the Escalade IQ with its piano key taillight. And another classic EV staple, there is no start-stop button, so you just sit in here, put your foot on the brake, the door will whir itself closed, throw yourself into drive, and off you go with a symphony of binging and bonging. And one of the most interesting things about the Escalade IQ is the name. Now every other Cadillac EV, Lyric, Optic, Vistic, all end in IQ, and technically the Escalade IQ does as well. But since the Escalade is such an icon and such a flagship, it is exempt and transcends the IQ ending designation. So it's not the Escaladic, it's the Escalade IQ. And you have this little icon here on the dash. That's your Regen braking. You can turn that on to different levels. Or one of my favorite things is I don't like to have Regen braking on. I like the school of thought of coasting, but I have this little paddle here. And depending on how much you pull it, it is tied to how much Regen braking you're going to get. I love this, my wife loves this, everyone I talk to loves this little paddle. And the fact that it's not just binary on or off, it's graduating in the way that you pull it, which is very, very cool. And also on the steering wheel, you have this little V button here. Not much happens, but you do have a little VMAX that appears here on your screen. And think of this kind of like BMW's boost paddle, where you can be in tour or comfort mode, and then you hit this, and then you unlock all 775 horsepower and 1,000 Newton meters of torque thereabouts. And much like this thing's cousins, the Hummer EVs, you do have rear steering. And you've got about 10 degrees, I believe, of rear steer. So you can enable that or control it, turn it on and off here, or you can go so far as to enable arrival mode, which is just crab walk, but in fancy Cadillac terms and with a fancy Cadillac badge. That is how you make an entrance. And this little toggle right here is how you control your digital instrument cluster. You can see you've got 4 different screens that you can choose from. This is gauge. You can get a full Google Maps screen, which is very, very cool. Or you can go into your driver assistant stuff to help keep track of what Super Cruise is doing. Or one of the most interesting is all the way down at the bottom, you have a night vision camera. It takes a second to start up, but it's like legit night vision, which is very cool, especially if you're going to end up driving this thing around at night through rural roads and you're worried about deer or things jumping out onto the street, which does happen in Wisconsin, believe it or not. So this night vision thing is pretty sweet. And then back to our little helper screen, there's a little camera icon here. Obviously, if you go into reverse, it'll bring up your cameras as well. But one of the most interesting things is you've got a traditional 360 and overhead looking view, rear facing view, but then you've got this boat view. This is your trailering view, and you've got this old like European style Chris Craft or wooden boat designation here. Cool little attention to detail. I like that graphic. And if you had the tow hitch installed, you could tow up to 8,000 pounds. And this is something I don't think I've seen in any other EVs. I'm sure it was in the Silverado EV and the Lightning, but you do have a trailer brake controller here on your Escalade IQ. And for this next one, we're going to jump into the rear seats. We have the executive rear seating package, which means we have some additional extra goodies in here. We'll close this up real quick, and then we'll go into our little menu toggle, and then we have this screen here. We've got a conversation enhancer. And so what it does is it says, when on, the front speakers will amplify your voice from the back here so the driver and front passenger can better hear you. And I was talking about this with my wife. It would make more sense to do this in reverse. So if you're trying to have a conversation with the front passengers, they don't have to turn their heads or yell so you can hear them in the back. And I have some thoughts on these cup holders, but one of the nice features is this little center bit. You can push down, and now it's a more mug-friendly, handle-oriented cup holder. Then you just push this button here, then it comes right back up. In a pretty luxurious fashion too. But speaking of stuff over here, we look at our side view mirror, and this is like flat. It almost has like a magnified effect to it. You get used to it after a couple hours, but at the beginning when I first started driving this thing, it did throw me off a little bit to the point where it kind of felt like it wasn't super helpful. Now since then I have gotten used to it, but something could be done to make this side view mirror a little bit better. And we're going to press this little button here. That's going to open our front trunk. So let's take a look at that because there's something interesting going on. Now, this is an incredibly long trunk. So to reach something that's towards the back would be really difficult. So you have this $1,000 organizer here, which people on the internet are calling the Cadaver tray. If you ever see like, you know, detective shows or crime scene shows, they take bodies from the morgue in that little refrigerated section and they're on this little thing. It kind of feels like that, but it is a handy little thing. So now I can reach things that were in the back of the trunk and then just slide it right back in. Apparently that button in there does not close the frunk. You have to go to this little button underneath the grill here. And it takes a second and then closes itself. But with all those little odds and ends covered, let's zoom back out and talk about what this thing is, what's new, and what does it compete against. Now this Escalade IQ is a big one because the Escalade kind of personifies the Cadillac brand. But like I mentioned before, it shares nothing with the internal combustion Escalade, at least in terms of a chassis. This is 2.7 inches shorter than an Escalade ESV, the longer wheelbase or longer version, but it's 4.2 inches wider than a conventional internal combustion Escalade. But there's an even bigger one of these things coming later on. Another 4-inch longer Escalade IQL is on its way. So what does it really compete against then? Well, there's not a lot of big 3-row EVs. There's Rivian's R1S that's been out for a while and even has gotten its pretty significant Gen 2 or mid-cycle update. You've got Tesla's Model X, which has been out for a long time, and Lucid just dropped their Gravity. I think the Gravity is actually probably the most realistic competitor to something like this, or if we're thinking about pomp and circumstance and pizzazz, you could think of something maybe like a Mercedes EQG or G580 with EQ technology, whatever they're calling it, it's the electric G-Wagon. But let's talk motors and power. Now this Escalade IQ is going to come with dual motor all-wheel drive as standard. They're not technically the same motors that you would see in the cousin Hummer EV SUV. But either way, full power output in VMAX mode is about 750 horsepower and 780 pound-feet of torque. That's about 1,000 Newton meters rounded up, which is what you'll see on the tailgate. 0 to 60 is done in around 4.5 seconds, and it's not super efficient as you might expect for something this large. We got back with our Lakeshore Loop fuel economy or efficiency test at 2.1 miles per kilowatt hour, and we did a 70-mile-an-hour highway test, and it came back with 1.7 miles per kilowatt hour. And with the 205 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's the usable amount, it's the same 24 module pack as the Hummer EV truck. Cadillac says you're going to get about 460 miles of range. Now the EPA doesn't actually do any testing for efficiency, and it actually doesn't even do crash safety testing because of the weight of this thing. But when you take our Lakeshore Loop 2.1 miles per kilowatt hour and apply it to the 205 kilowatt hour battery, that means it's got a max range from what we've seen is about 430 miles. And then if we extrapolate that 1.7 miles per kilowatt hour, 75 mile an hour highway test, then we're looking at about 350, 340 miles on a full charge from this battery, which are truly shocking and fantastic figures. But again, you're going to pay for it in something like a 205 kilowatt hour battery. But when you do need to recharge this thing, it recharges super fast. It'll charge up to 350 kilowatts, and it'll do 100 miles in about 10 minutes, as long as you can find a charger that'll do that. The onboard charger for a level 2, like you can charge at home, maxes out at 19 kilowatts. My charger, though, maxes out at about 14 kilowatts. So it'll take quite a while to charge this thing up. But the nice thing is, if you do find yourself on the road and you don't have an Electrify America charger nearby, this, with an adapter, can charge at a Tesla charger. So range anxiety really hasn't been a thing this week. Normally when I get EVs to test, every time I finish driving them around, I bring them back home and I plug them back in. But with this thing and over 400 miles of range and the ability to charge anywhere, I really haven't even thought about having to charge this thing. So that's kind of nice, and probably would be really nice for you. But all right, we've been alluding to it. Let's talk about weight and dynamics. This Escalade IQ tips the scales at over 9,000 pounds, about 9,100 pounds. And it feels it when you drive it around. Now it does have air suspension with mag ride dampers, and it does ride really pretty well, but at no point does it make me forget just how big and heavy this thing is. Now this is a slightly longer wheelbase than you would have in a conventional Escalade ESV, the long boy. And it does have rear steer here on the IQ to help it feel a little bit more agile and nimble around town. And it does, it works really, really well. But it does feel big and it does feel imposing, and you might like that, you might not, but that's how it is, and we'll talk more about this behind the wheel later on. But now let's talk styling. This Escalade IQ, our tester here, is draped in midnight steel frost paint. It is like a matte light blue, and it is spectacular. It's almost $6,000 for this paint, but I think it's totally worth it. All of the test IQs have been white, but this is the first matte blue, and it looks the business. Now you've got a light up face similar to like we did in the Lyric. The lights do dances to impress and show off to your friends. And then from the profile, you can see the long hood on this thing, and underneath is the 24-inch aero-specific wheels. They look very Gatsby, very opulent, roaring 20s. And your front fender badge detail also works as a turn signal and adds a little bit of mystique. But then zooming out and taking in the entire profile, you've got a slightly more sleek roofline with a body color matched D-pillar. It takes up a little bit of space and makes the third row feel a little bit more claustrophobic, but it looks cool from the outside. And we have the black two-tone roof. It's an $1,100 option, but I think it really works. Although with a paint like this, maybe I want to see the whole thing in that matte blue. But then as we get to the rear, it looks a little funky for my taste, but I think it's clean and stylish. And you've got the chrome bar that runs its way from the side of the car around the back to make a nice cohesive band. You've got vertical piano key tail lights and a bit of badging. Overall, I think it looks pretty decent. What do you like the look of more, this IQ or the conventional gas-powered Escalade? Leave it down in the comments. And before we talk about the trunk, we're going to talk about the frunk. There's a little rubber button offset on the driver's side, and that then eventually opens up our incredibly long hood, which, as you can see from the profile, is in fact incredibly long, and that reveals the 12 cubic foot frunk. Now it is fairly skinny. There's a lot of motors and all sorts of things going on underneath the skin here. So you have a fairly skinny, a little bit deep, but fairly deep lengthwise thing going on here. Again, 12 cubic feet, which means Cadillac is going to sell you this for $1,000. This is their organizer tray. It's on track so you can pull it out, so if you need to reach things in the back, it's easier to do so, which would be very helpful indeed. But it doesn't stop there. You do even have tie downs, you've got nets. This is like a rubberized all-season mat here. You've got a 400-watt outlet up here, so if you want to tailgate, that's super easy. You've got lights and an emergency release. And this is where you put your windshield washer fluid. And then we're around back to check out the normal trunk. Now you just press the little Cadillac button at the bottom of the crest, and of course it'll power open itself. We do have a specific button to close, although not a close and lock button. I think it automatically locks itself when you walk away with the key in your pocket. Now, what we're looking at here is 23.6 cubic feet of space behind the third row. That's a little bit smaller than a normal length gas Escalade. Of course, there's a bunch of batteries and modules and things going on here, but you also have a little tiny bit of underfloor storage. I don't even really know what this stuff is down here, but you have a tiny bit of space down there. We've got tie downs back here, and we do have a household outlet, which is kind of nice. And we can even power fold the third row. Now pay attention, because we have the executive second row or rear seat option, which makes folding down the third row a pain in the ass. When you do get it down though, you're looking at about 69 cubic feet of space. If we didn't have our executive rear seat package, then with everything down, we'd be looking at 119 cubic feet of space. But since we have the executive rear seat package, we can't get those seats completely out of the way. So we're kind of made do with just the third row down, but it does take some finessing to get those second row seats out of the way so the third row can go down. And the other thing that I should mention, I should have mentioned it before we opened up the tailgate, the IQ does not have an opening option for your rear glass like you would get in the gas Escalade, but we do have a windshield washer, or windshield wiper I should say, tucked up underneath the spoiler. Now in the vein of that third row that we've been talking about, we'll open up the rear door, and again, the executive rear seating package. We do have a little toggle here that's going to, excuse me, fold this seat down, but then it doesn't really whir itself out of the way. And even when it does, hold on, we can do it here. Seat controls, position, right, select here. Even if I move it all the way forward, which takes forever, and now I'm being squished. Ow. Ow. Then I have to refold this now. So even with this seat all the way forward and folded, this is how I'm supposed to get in here. This doesn't detach, so I have to somehow finesse my way through here. And this, it's possible to get in, but then when I'm back here getting out, really, really tough to do. Now, these seats themselves, if you didn't have the executive third row, this would be a much more usable space. I would go so far as to say with the executive rear seat package, this just becomes a 4-seat, 2-row vehicle. But if you didn't have these and you had the normal seats, you'd be able to access these. There's 3 seats back here. The perforations all looks pretty nice. You've got a cup holder, you've got a charger, you have a little bit of that kind of window that's being taken up by that accentuated D-pillar, but we do have some vents up here. It's pretty tight, I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty tight back there. Some of that has to do with the executive third row or second row package, but it's just not as big as you would have from a normal gas Escalade. So my opinion, third row, not usable in the executive seat package on the Escalade IQ. And then we'll move up to the second row. We'll re-demonstrate the door because it's cool, so it is still automatic for the second row. Now again, the executive rear seat package, that's $7,500. They are very comfy, they are very cool. AKG speakers in here, 3-level heated, 3-level cooled, massage, and we even have the entertainment package. These rear entertainment screens, an additional $2,000, but they're very cool. Now, I'll demonstrate the space in a second, but we do have leather-wrapped kind of entire rear of the front seats. Love that detail. We've got an additional storage cubby down here with some, I think, HDMIs and a charger down there. So if you wanted to hook up like a gaming system, you could do that. Now, I'll step in at 6'1". Obviously, I have these chairs moved all the way back. I've got plenty of knee room. I've got plenty of headroom even with this big panel roof. There's no shade for the panel roof built into it, but they sell you a shade that they keep in the trunk, so you can use that if you want to. We'll close the door automatically, of course, and then this is kind of cool. Now, normally when you see a rear entertainment package, it's just a lot of stuff that you would see from the infotainment. You get some of that stuff, energy usage, range, speed, trip information, but most of it is focused on entertainment. Kids YouTube, normal YouTube, you can watch Downshift videos. Hulu, you can log in. You can use this as a legitimate web browser. And obviously, You've got 2 HDMI screens, and you can even share your screen here on this side to this screen over here. So you can almost like airdrop the screen, and now you can see both stuff on each screen. But there is another screen here, and this is your center command screen. Now, we're used to seeing this on Uber luxury cars. We should mention we also do have dual cup holders and dual phone charging here, but we'll get to this in a second because it's kind of cool. Now, we have 5 zones of climate. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for your third row. So you can control all of that stuff for the second and third row here on your screen. You've also got an air quality thing going on here, classic luxury car stuff. We've got seat controls, again, heated, cooled, and then massage. We can adjust position in here. If you want to connect to your phone or, you know, keep things charging here. And then here, your miscellaneous controls. You've got door controls, so you can, again, control what's going on with either of the doors. Pretty cool. But you can also, I gotta wait now. And you can also control your own zone of ambient light, or the zone of ambient light for the entire car, which is pretty sweet. I love ambient light, you guys know that. And we've even got the conversation enhanced thing that we showed you before. But let's get these doors back closed so we can talk about what's going on in this center console. Now you lift this up, and this is executive indeed. This is like what we had on the last Delta flight that we were in. You press this little black trigger here, and then these handy little trays fold out, because I'm obviously incredibly important. I have work to do, and now I can do it in the comfort while getting a heated massage here in the back of my Escalade IQ. And I can even have stuff on Hulu if I wanted to watch the news or a sports game or whatever while I type away and do business here on my tray. I would say this is a pretty legit executive rear seating package. Maybe it makes the third row pretty unusable, but as far as the second row goes, there's not much more luxury I could want than what we have in the back of the IQ here. And then we'll move up the cabin to the front seats as we typically do. Now we do have heated back and butt, and then cooled seats. Of course, we've even got 2 level of memory and our little massage control here on the door. And all that stuff can also be accessed here on your center command screen. Now the seats themselves, really pretty comfortable. I love the ornate kind of perforation and detailing, the kind of offset smaller stitch and then larger perforations in here. AKG speakers in the headrest. Feels a little bit more like a gimmick than anything, but still very, very cool. Seats themselves pretty comfy. I can get in a natural seating position. It took a second, and especially this frontward visibility feels a little bit, you know, kind of not super tall, but overall, I did get myself into a position that I thought was comfortable, and so are these seats. And then how could we not talk about the interior, the cabin experience, what it's like to even just sit in here. Now, obviously, as you can see, this thing is all about the screens. The entire dash is 55 inches worth of screens. That's as big as the biggest TV in my house, to be honest. Maybe that's embarrassing, I don't know. But anyway, you have ambient light. It shines through these laser cut and etched pieces of wood in the door card, and it is just the coolest thing. I love ambient light, and it is just truly intoxicating staring at this thing in the day and catching the light off of this wood paneling here for your center console and across your dash. And then the lighting show that you get at night feels very Miami, feels very club-like. Now our interior spec here is the Camellia and Back in Black interior. It's kind of a 2-tone, mostly light tan, and it just looks the business. Very, very cool. So much nicer than a full black interior. You do have a good amount of storage in here too. Your center console can actually be swapped out if you don't like the flying bridge and the little cubby underneath. You can get a cool box under there, although personally I might skip it. It seems a little bit unnecessary. But your steering wheel is kind of a 2-spoke design, and it kind of feels a little bit classy and Gatsby and ornate. And overall, the interior just feels special. And then when it comes to technology, like I mentioned, the entire dash is 55 inches from pillar to pillar, basically screens. It's flanked with these AKG speakers bookended on either side. And we'll get to some of the stuff. We could do an entire half hour on just the tech in here, but we'll try to keep it fairly high level. You do have a head-up display. It shows you everything you could possibly need to see. You do have a fully digital instrument cluster that goes from here all the way to about there. That's where that screen stops, and then the passenger gets their own screen. It is curved, and it does strike me initially when I first got into the car. It does feel that this is pointed that way. You get used to it in about an hour or two, but just something that stuck out to me right away. But I got different stuff that I can see, and we covered some of this earlier. So we've got a gauge, full Google Maps, driver assistance, and the night vision thing, which is very, very cool. Over here is your center screen. No Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto, but you do have great 360 cameras and that little trailer hitch one that we saw earlier and talked about. But we do have Google built-in Assistant, Play Store, we've got Alexa built in here, we've got news, we've got maps, and all of the stuff that you would normally like to see. And over here, we should talk about the passenger side screen. This is basically the same stuff you're gonna see in the back. So you can go on YouTube, you can go on Hulu, you can use it as a web browser, and there's a prismatic effect. So when I go into drive, now this is gonna stay on because it knows that there's no one sitting here, so there's no media up there. So it's just gonna say Escalade IQ. But if my wife was sitting here, it would then black out that screen entirely so I could not see it unless I was sitting over here. Now, when you are watching something on here while someone's driving, it does look a little bit dim, like the vibrance is turned down, but overall, for what it is, it's still pretty cool. And there's one more screen here, I guess I should say two, because you do have a digital rear view mirror. Always a nice treat, especially if you're gonna have kids or things loaded up in the back. But your center screen down here, your little helper screen, this has all the same stuff that we saw on the back. So climate controls, air conditioning and quality controls, seat controls, heated, cooled, massage, heated steering wheel. I can even control the second row from right here. I can go into my massage and see all sorts of settings and intensities, and I can adjust my position in here too if I can't be bothered to use these controls here. We do have our miscellaneous controls. We've got safety, drive, I can operate the doors and window settings, lighting controls for ambient lighting and things like that, rear steering, turn on, off, whatever, head-up display adjustments, up, down, center. We've got parking controls, it has automatic parking, and then of course I can control the doors, the glove box, and even the charging port here. We've seen all of that. There's a little bit of a drop down here, and now you can see that I can control a lot of the same stuff. Glove box release, there it is. Wasn't looking for that, I was looking for that earlier. And then over here, we've got our arrival mode, rear steer, motion sensing, and all of that stuff. And it goes so far as we've got lighting controls in here, we've got adaptive cruise and safety stuff, and we can pull up our cameras on the big screen here. Whew, that's a lot of tech stuff. Basically, the point is you can have everything that you possibly could think of minus a heated and cooled cup holder. But that is crazy stuff. And we didn't even talk about Super Cruise, one of the best, if not the best, driver assistance suites in the game. It's like totally hands-free, eyeball watcher here. It'll automatically make lane changes to overtake and then lane changes back to put you in the right-hand lane so other people can get past you. Really love Super Cruise. The car here comes with a 3-year subscription to it. From there you gotta pay, but it's really good and probably worth it. And the last thing that we'll talk about before we go for a bit of a drive is the price. Now an Escalade IQ, not the IQL, but the IQ standard, starts at $130,000. Ours here, the Luxury 2 with the paint and all of the executive rear seats and everything that we have equipped here, is testing at almost $168,000. We're at $167,500. And that's a lot of money, but there is so much car here. So let's get behind the wheel and talk a little bit more about the value and the things that we got going on. Hey guys, real quick, Matt here. Just wanted to say I hope you've been enjoying the video. If you have, would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does go a long way in helping us get access to cars sooner and get access to manufacturer engineers so we can get more information on the cars and get you more information so you can make better decisions. So would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe, like, comment, the whole YouTube thing. But with that, let's get back to the video. I don't have to go into sport mode because I have VMAX button. Oh God. There's like torque steer. That's so weird. There is torque steer and it's very strange because it does feel like it's pulling left. But man, 750 horsepower, 1,000 Newton meters of torque, 780 pound-feet of torque. It's not slow, 0 to 60 quicker than an E46 M3 in something that weighs over 9,000 pounds. It's so big. I'm sorry I keep talking about how big this thing is, but truly that is the thing that stands out to me when I've been driving this thing. Everything about it is big. Everything. The wheels are big. The hood is huge. The trunk floor is high up. You have to hoist things up to get it in there. It does feel enormous just sitting in my driveway. And then you get in here and you're like, okay, it's decent space, but it doesn't feel as big. It kind of shrinks around you a little bit, almost sports car-esque. But everything about this, not only does it feel big, it feels special. It feels so bespoke and unique, almost like a Halo Lexus car, like a Lexus LC500, but like in a very different way, obviously. But the wood that you have here has almost like hints of like lighter brown in it, and it's lacquered over. So a lot of times you don't get to see it because it's just reflecting the sun, but in lower lights, in like evening times when like you get the warmer tones from the sun, it is just spectacular to behold. The AKG speakers are gorgeous to look at. It just feels proper special. You get this, the wood that's in the door cards is laser cut. So they lay the ambient light behind it and then it shows through the laser cut perforations in the wood. I mean, it's like that little level of detail that just goes so over the top. It's so roaring 20s, it's so opulent. It's all the stuff I said about the Soleil when I saw it last year in Detroit. I mean, not to that level, that's a very bespoke level in that car, but it is kind of the same vein. The perforations in the seats, everything is just so nice. But in terms of driving this thing, how can I say it's big without saying it's big? You sit up really high, you just do. And you can tell when the doors open, you have these automatic doors, which are just such a hoot. They open up and you just see all of this like car, and you've got the running board, and then you step up and it's still like more car that you have to scale to get up into the seats. But when you get up here, the seats are super comfortable. And they massage, and like they actually massage, not like the massage that some of the other luxury cars do. They like actually massage, and it feels good. It's just such an event. The thing is though, when you drive this thing, I find myself going faster than I'm expecting because it is so high, so you're so removed from the road, and it doesn't make any sound. And it's so isolated. You've got this acoustic glass, and it's just super refined. It's a very luxury car, so you don't get that sound sensation of speed. And it just kind of wafts, and the ride is so like neutral that it doesn't feel like 80 doesn't feel 80. 80 feels like 60. So you can find yourself going a little bit fast. Like I'm going 50 right now, and it feels like I'm going 35 because it's just so isolating everything out. So it is something that you have to like kind of reorient your mind around. I don't know, like the thing is with this car, I was so looking forward to doing this review because I was like just genuinely so interested. And one of our YouTube members, shout out to you, PowerShot, had requested a review of this car. So I was really excited to check it out. And every once in a while we get a car here and they drop it off, and like there's that anxious and like excited energy, but there's also a little bit of nerves and a little bit of anxiety because like it took me days to test everything, play with everything, learn everything. And so there's that little anxiety in the back of my head that there's just so much going on that I've missed something, that I've forgotten something, that I didn't notice something. And so like, that's a very unique problem to me. But what I'm trying to illustrate is like, there's so many features. There's so many little details going on, little nuances, little things to make this feel unique and special, that it's going to take you days, weeks, months, like into your ownership experience, you'll probably still be finding new things and exciting things about your car weeks and months into ownership. And I think that says a lot. This is cool, man. This is cool. I mean, there's some trade-offs that you make with the executive rear seat packages that we've talked about, but I like it. I do. I really do. So thank you to Cadillac for letting me have a go. Thank you to you for watching. Leave it down in the comments what you think of this enormous, beautiful, special thing. And we'll see you in the next one.